Hello, welcome back. Let's talk about the Swift programming language and variables. This will be an introduction to the Swift language, and we'll just, this is for, beginners, anybody who hasn't programmed before. This will be a nice, gentle introduction. I'm going to open up Xcode in order to work with Swift and to create iOS applications. And Swift is the language that we use for writing our iOS applications. You'll need to download Xcode. So you can download this from the Apple App Store. And once you have it, it's a big download. So once you have this installed, you can continue with the video. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to the File menu up here and choose, let me actually zoom in on that, right? So wait, let me switch to Xcode there. I'm in Xcode. I'm going to go to the File menu and I'm going to choose New Playground. So what is a playground? A playground is a file that lets us run code to, essentially play around, right? So we can create a playground and type some code and run the code and see what happens without making a whole application around it, right? So if you're going to learn to write code, you need a place to practice, and this is that place. So I've opened up a new playground, and it's asking me what kind of playground would you like to create, and we can create a blank one, a game, a map, a single view. I'm going to choose this first one here, blank, okay, and then I'll click next. And then Xcode asks me, where do you want to save your playground? So I'm going to put it in my folder here and call it variables. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. And then I'll click create, and here is my playground. Okay, so there it is, right? And over on the left column here, you'll see some things that are in the playground folder here, and you can ignore that. We want to be always at the top level when we're working with the playground. Sometimes you'll see other things, and if you are, you might want to click on this files folder icon here to go back to your files, right? And you click on variables. In the middle here, we have the editor, and the editor is where we write our code. In the right column, we have sort of a window into what's happening in the code, right? And so we'll see some output here that shows us what the value of variables will be at a particular line. And so variables, like the name suggests, they vary, they change over time. So you might see the values change here, okay? I'm going to go to the bottom of this playground window. Oops, here we go, right? So I'm going to zoom in on the bottom here, and you'll see there's a little play button here. So we click this to run our code that's in the playground in the editor, and then this little icon in the lower right corner here opens up the terminal, right? So, or the debug console, right? So I'm going to open that up, and then it opens up a little window here, and we can specifically send messages to this window. Let's give that a try. So I'm going to go into my playground here, and I'm going to type some code. Anytime we want to see something in the window at the bottom, we can use the print command. Okay, so I'll say print, and then I can print anything I want. If you want to print a literal value, like a message, like hello world, like this, you can put it in quotation marks. The quotation marks signify a string, okay, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we need to make a string here, right? If you want to print a number, you can just type the number in there without the quotation marks. And actually, the number will also work with the quotation marks, but it'll be a different thing. So if I do this, this is the string 42, right? And this is the number 42. So the string 42 we can't do math with. We can just print the characters 4 and 2. But with the number 42, we could do some math with it, right? So we could say plus 1, right? And then this would print 43, right? But don't take my word for it. Let's try it out. So I'm going to click, you can click the play button here to run all the code up to this line, or you can click the play button down here to run all the code in the file. So it'll take sometimes it takes a minute for the playground to start up. Oh, there we go. So now you can see, I see the output, or I can see the value that the computer sees at each line. So it sees hello playground, and it sees hello world, and then it sees 43. And the /n represents a line return. Okay, so it's kind of like this character. It's hard to see it. That gray kind of L on its side is a line return, right? So that's what that means, right? You can ignore that for now. And then here I have 43, right? And to print that out, you notice this is a number, but it wrapped it in the quotation marks here because it's showing you the output as a string, okay? And then I see the values here, and you'll notice that it added 1 to 42 before printing the value, okay? Okay, so let's try that out. Let's talk about variables for a minute. So in programming, anytime you have a value that your program's going to work with, and if that value is going to change over time, right? Think about the score in a game, right? You know, as you progress through the game, your score is going to increase, right? And so we have a value that we need to store for the score, right? And then we need to increase that value over time. So what you would do is you would define the score like this. We would say var score equals, and then we give it a value, okay? It could be any value type that the computer recognizes, right? So in our case, I've declared score as a var, and then I've given it a value of 0, okay? So a couple things are happening here, right? Var represents a variable where the value can change over time, okay? And we use var the first time the value appears, okay? So score appears the first time here on line 4, and if I was going to use score again, I could say score equals score plus 50 points, right? And then I could print the value of score. Wait, I gotta spell it right. There we go. Print. I could print the value of score here, and the value of score here would be 50. Notice here I did not use the word var. And if I do, I'll see an error message, right? So I clicked here and it says circular reference, right? I know they give you a computer error that's hard to take apart, right? But it's a circular reference, right? And basically what it's saying is, you know what, you can't redeclare this name. You've already declared it once. So, you know, essentially with var, you're saying, let's make a brand new variable with this name. And every variable has to have a unique name, okay? Right? So here I've declared score, and then here I'm trying to declare a new variable with the same name, and that's not allowed. Okay, so to fix this, we got to get rid of var there. And now if I run my code, you'll see that it says, you know, 50 in the terminal, right? And I see 50 right here too. Okay, so I see 50 at the bottom. So that's working pretty good. And we could keep going too. I could say score equals, you know, score plus another 100 points, right? You know, and then I could print the score again, right? And you'll notice the computer is going to execute each line of code in order, okay? So it executes line, you know, 1, it imports UIKit. This gets some functions and things that we can use, like the print function and stuff. So you can ignore that for now. And then line 3, we declared the greeting variable. Line 4, we declared the score variable. And then line 6, let's say we've reassigned a new value to score, and the new value is the old value of score plus 50. Okay, so we add these two things together, take the total, and assign it to score. Now score has a new value, okay? And then we printed the value, and we saw it here. And then on line 10, we took the current value of score, which is 50. We added 100 to it, and so we got 150 right here. And then we took this 150 and we assigned it to score. Okay, so the old value of score 50 at this point was erased and lost and replaced with the 150 value. And then on line 12, we printed the value again. Okay, and then we saw that here. So the computer executes each line of code in order. Okay, that's first rule there. Okay, second rule is when we declare a variable, the first time we talk about the variable, the first time we mention its name, we have to declare it, and we declare it with the word var. Okay, and you're allowed at that time to give it a value if you want, so you can put equal after it. You don't have to do that here though. You could do it this way too. You could say, you know, greeting equals hello, right? And you could put hello here like this and not have a value up here. This runs into a little bit of a problem though, because it's going to tell us that it doesn't know what type that variable is, okay? Right? So this is not the best way to do this. It's good anytime you have a variable to always give it a value, okay? So, you can also give a value a type like this. We can say :string to say what type it is, right? Swift, and then you can see the error goes away, right? Swift will, we could also do this, right? We could say :string and then, put the equal sign after it like that all in one line. So Swift will also infer the type. So in other words, if I don't put a string here, if I don't say it's type string, and then I just say equal to a string, then Swift assumes, well, you know what, you're assigning a string to this variable greeting, so greeting must be a string. And we can test that by holding the Option key, and then, notice when I hover over the variable and click on it, actually when I hover over it, I get the question mark, and then when I click on it, the little window pops up, and it tells me that this is a declaration for var greeting, and it's type string, okay? And I can do the same thing here with score, and you notice I click on this, and it says score var declaration var score is type int, okay? And I can use that anywhere. So if I've, if my code was up here and I can't remember what type I declared for score, I can, hover over score here with the Option key and click on it, and you can see it says type int, okay? So int is type integer. Integers are whole numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not a decimal number like 2.7, okay, or 3.14, okay? So right here, if we had wanted a decimal number, we could have put, 0.0, and then that would declare score as type double. So double is a decimal number, like a floating point number. You could also put, double here like this, and then just declare with the 0, okay? We'll talk more about this type and the colon coming up, okay? But anyway, let's go over the rules again. We'll just reiterate, right? So anytime you have a variable, you declare it with the keyword var, and then you give it a name. Important point here. When you're naming variables, then you can invent any name you like with these rules. It must begin with a letter, okay? And then the rest of the name must be made up of letters and numbers. Spaces and special characters are not allowed. And there's actually an exception to this. There's certain special characters are allowed. The underscore and the $sign are allowed, okay? But generally, let's just say no special characters are allowed, okay? So there we go. So we got greeting, that fits the rule, begins with a letter. The rest of the name is just letters or numbers, right? And no special characters, right? So that's good. Score followed the same rule. It's a good idea to declare your variables at the top of your code, okay? So rather than, printing greeting here and then declaring a second variable later, this works just fine. Like I can print this or run the code and it runs just fine there. But rather than doing that, all of my declarations, the ones with the var keyword, I'm going to move them up to the top and place them together, right? And then I'll put a line return or something to kind of separate it and say, like, okay, this is where I'm declaring the variables, and then here's where I'm using the variables, okay? And you can take out the lines, the extra lines if you want here. Okay, so there's our first section on variables, okay? Let's do something else now, okay? So another type of variable is called a constant, okay? So a constant is a value that that doesn't change. It can't change, okay? You cannot reassign to it. You can see the value score right here has changed. It's evolved. It's gone from 0 to 50 to 150, right? And along the way that was okay. But sometimes we have a value that doesn't change. Like, for example, like let's say we actually want to get rid of this greeting right here, and we want to welcome somebody to playing the game. So we would change this to name, and then we'd set the name to, player 1 or something, right? And then I could say, print here, and I could say, get ready, and then I'll do another print statement here. I'll say name, right? Okay, and then I can run my code there, and we'll see get ready, player 1, 50, 100, and we're playing the game. Okay, just use your imagination, right? So we're not really playing a game, but okay. So what happened here, right? Well, I printed this message, and then I printed the name, and maybe I know that this name is not going to change while we play the game. So in that case, making this a var is kind of, actually inviting potential error, because I could actually accidentally assign a new value to it, and then it might print the wrong name for the player, right? So in that case, we can declare this with the word let. So when we use the word let, we call it a constant. Okay, so constants are constant, they don't change. That's different from variables, which vary and can change over time, right? So here this is a constant, and if I run the code here, it works the same way, right? Everything is the same. So what's the difference, right? Well, the difference is that if I was to say name equals Cindy, right, like this, then I'll see an error pop up because it'll say cannot assign to value name, or cannot assign to value name is a let constant, right? So I can click on this to open that up, right? It's a let constant. Change let to var to make it mutable. So whenever the documentation uses the term mutable, they're saying something can change over time. If they say immutable, it can't change, okay? So, I actually didn't want to do this, right? So I'm going to get rid of it. So actually, this is good because you'll notice that it's finding a mistake. Like I did not mean to change name, right? So that's why we use a constant. If we have a value and we know that value can't change, what we do is we declare it as a constant. And if we change it by accident, then the computer catches that for us, okay? It also has a side effect that it's more efficient. So the computer has to devote a little bit more memory to a variable, right, than a constant. So a constant doesn't have, a little extra memory because the computer knows that it can't change, okay? Okay, great. So now we've learned a couple things, right? We've learned about variable, how to name a variable. We've learned about constant, and constants use the same names as naming convention as variables, so you already know how to name them, okay? Sometimes people will do this. They'll use an all uppercase letters for constants, and that's okay too. Generally in Swift they don't do that, but in some languages that's a convention. Then you can do that if you like. Okay. So anyway, there you go. There's a quick introduction to variables with let and var in the Swift programming language. And I'll follow this up with another video that has a little more information on it, and then just to keep these short so you can review them easily. Okay, so thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day.